his name is on first, and then Mr. Steinbuck. So just introduce yourself and you're recognized.
Yes, Senator Johnson, I appreciate you the opportunity as a member of the public to speak on my opinion with this legislation. Also, want to thank Senator Nestor for allowing us to be able to meet here on behalf of this legislation. Like I said, my name is Reese Brown. I'm a college student right now at UALR. I've lived in Arkansas my whole life in Pine Bluff, born and raised, and I find that even with the contention around this passage of the legislation, that it's very important that us as the public gets to speak out about it, because ultimately we're the reason why that the legislation is being brought forth in the first place. Right? Without the public, there would be none of this. I want to address a couple pieces of legislation that I find that I disagree with, and the first being the security purposes. I think that obviously everybody in this room can probably attest to the fact that we want to see the governor and the first family protected at all costs. I don't think anybody disagrees with that, as we've even heard from some of the senators here today. I do believe that transparency and public accountability are not the enemies here, however, in order to be able to provide that security for the governor and the first family. As you're all aware, the bill's provisions are very extensive. It's one thing to protect sensitive security details, it's another to use it as a smokescreen to show government actions from public scrutiny. I find that very controversial, as do many in this room, frankly. The next piece I would like to address is the lack of federal transparency. How a lot of members here in the legislature would likely argue that federal transparency is not how we would like it to be. However, we find ourselves sitting in a situation where state transparency is being limited in the same ways that we would like to complain that it is such at the federal level. We would like to complain how there are things that maybe the president would be doing that we would like to know more information about, and we find a lack of transparency. And I find it maybe a little bit hypocritical that we're going to be able to allow that kind of transparency to be done away with at the state level. I would also like to, talk about these candid conversations. While I find that candid conversations are a good thing on certain occasions, to be able to have those kind of conversations without people being worried about them being, I guess, if you want to consider it stalked or whatever, but at the same time, you kind of take on that responsibility when you're elected to a position, even as important as governor of the state of Arkansas. And so I think that hiding behind closed doors is not transparency, and in fact, it's an affront to the principles of democracy here in the state of Arkansas. The last thing I'd like to bring up is future misuse of this legislation. I think that I speak specifically to those who are in favor of this legislation when I say that while you all may believe the current administration has good intentions, and I'm not going to say here or there whether the current administration does or not, but I would assume that all of you believe that they do, that we must all consider the possibility that future leaders may not, and that this legislation does not just affect the current sitting governor, but rather, as we've already heard a little bit about today, this also affects every governor moving forward in the state of Arkansas unless the legislation is changed in the future. And I think that, regardless of political affiliation, that needs to be of pertinent concern. And I really just want to end with saying that, we shouldn't be sacrificing transparency in the process of providing this additional security. If this was truly just a security legislation, FOIA would not be in line with this. It would be being taken down in the process of this. And in fact, I think that you would probably see more support around this legislation if it was purely security matter, as we heard from Senator King just a moment ago. I do urge, that we reconsider, and I want to close with, a very popular song that's recently been written and released. Has a line in it that says, "These rich men north of Richmond, Lord knows they all just want to have total control, and the unfortunate reality feel like we're seeing the same thing here in Arkansas, this very day.